want to now bring in former Senator Mel Martinez, Republican from the state of Florida, and former chairman of the RNC. Good morning, sir. So you are in support. You agree with Marco Rubio and President Trump on this movement. Why?
Well, let me just say that I agree that some change to President Obama's policy on Cuba was warranted, and I think these measured changes that are taking place are probably headed in the right direction. What they're doing is enhancing the opportunity to do business with Cubans, not with the Cuban military, not with the Cuban government, not with the means of repression to the Cuban people, but to do business with those that can be empowered by the opportunity to make a living by trading with the United States or hosting someone at their home as part of the Airbnb type of arrangements that can be made outside of the Cuban government. So look, first of all, President Obama's policy on Cuba was a one-sided affair. There was no give and take. The Cuban government in the last year and a half or so, since that policy has been enacted, has only increased the level of repression on the Cuban people. And you know, Ali, with all due respect, I just don't think you can compare human rights abusers and say, well, they abuse more here and maybe a little bit less there. I think all human rights abuses, wherever they take place,
without a doubt,
I don't disagree with you on that point.
And the United States has always stood.
I understand, sir, but you saw that President Trump was doing a sword dance, right, with the Saudis. I'm not saying that Iranian human rights versus Chinese human rights versus Saudi human rights versus Cuban human. I'm not comparing human rights. I'm saying we celebrate with some people who are absolute human rights abusers, and then we get crazy about Cuba.
Because Cuba is a horrendous human rights abuser.
So is Saudi Arabia.
So is Iran. So is China.
So sure, so is China, but you know, you can't compare the geopolitical significance of China or the opportunity for business in China with those in Cuba. I mean, let's face it.
Sir, I'll just take issue with you for a second there. As you remember, Cuba used Venezuela as a patron. When oil crippled Venezuela, Venezuela told Cuba about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we can't be your patron anymore. Vladimir Putin was in Havana within a week. So the strategic, political, and military importance of Cuba is quite comparable to that of Russia or China in today's geopolitical economy.
And if we decide that we don't want to be doing business there, this is only going to open up an opportunity for places like China and Russia who can move right into Cuba and say, great, digitization, hotel, hospitality, we will get right there in that game. You're not going to stop it. You're going to stop American business from being able to take advantage of that.
Let me try to get a word in, okay? Take a deep breath. First of all, the United States has had a tremendous amount of antagonism from Cuba for 50 years. The fact that the Russians were back in Cuba, the Russians have been back in Cuba. The Russians have never really totally left being in cahoots with Cuba. The Chinese, of course, are in Cuba, and they may be enhancing their presence there. But look, when you talk about business and loss of 13,000 jobs, which I think is totally hysterical, I just don't think that's comparable with reality at all. You got to consider that airlines that started flying into Cuba, airlines that were thinking this would be a great bonanza to them, have cut back flights over the last year. In fact, the numbers of flights to Cuba have been reduced long before this policy was in place. So the bottom line is, until Cuba changes, I mean, I don't know why we get so focused on us to change. Why doesn't Cuba change? Why don't they open their markets? Why don't they let Cubans own property? Why don't they let American companies, if they were to do business in Cuba, hire Cubans directly?
Sir, I would like to, I want to let you finish, but you keep not answering the question. Right? You don't apply that standard to Saudi Arabia. You don't apply that standard to China. You don't apply that standard to Russia. You don't apply that standard to Turkey. You don't apply that standard anywhere else. And yet, for some reason, this is the greatest offense. And now you're going to tell me about all sorts of other things. I just want you to answer one question that we ask you that's actually a question about this. Let me tell you one other thing. Let's look at Washington Post report.
Which is why Cuba is different from all those other countries in terms of human rights?
Go ahead. Tell me.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because Cuba is 90 miles from our shores. We've had a 50-year history with Cuba because Cuba has a significant historical connection to the United States that has been with us from the inception of Cuba as a nation state. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of us care deeply about what happens in Cuba. It is a much closer problem to us.
Sir?
It has got a whole lot different geopolitical significance than Turkey or China. I mean, you just can't tell me that it's not a more...
Just because Cuba is in closer proximity to the state of Florida does not make the relations between Cuba and the United States more important. And as important as that relationship may be to some Americans, other Americans would make the same argument about other countries. Or how about Mexicans who are worried about the wall that's going to be built? They too are next door neighbors to Texas, and they're worried about that relationship. So to say because it's in closer proximity and there's Americans who care about it, Americans care about a lot of things, sir.
Look, here's the reality, okay? The geopolitical significance of the United States and China cannot be matched by any other relationship between two countries. The United States trade with China, the two most significant economies in the world, cannot be compared to the insignificant amount of trade taking place with Cuba. The importance of Turkey in the Middle East as a significant ally of the United States, as a nation that is a NATO partner, but that is also pivotal in the Middle East situation, also cannot be compared to the relationship with Cuba. What Cuba has been doing has been contrary to being an ally of the United States. For instance, it's been meddling in Venezuela. It has a client state in Venezuela. The repression and suppression and the deaths that are taking place on the streets of Caracas today are in part being directed by the Cuban military and security apparatus that are operating in Venezuela. Cuba was caught a couple of years ago, trading arms with North Korea. I mean, these are not things that are hypothetical events. These are things when you have a country that is looking to work with us. China's importance to North Korea, the #1 threat to our country. You just can't compare the significance in all of those relationships. So the United States is doing what it thinks is best for its own good, and the president, I think, is acting in what I think is a humane way about trying to enhance the opportunity for the Cuban people to have a better life and for human rights to be improved in Cuba. Let's see if Cuba makes some changes. Let's see if Cuba diminishes the number of political prisoners, which has only increased, and the harassment to dissidents that has only increased since President Obama changed the policy towards Cuba.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.